Welcome back to Uncovered. Today, guys, we are going to be covering off a little bit of pole business, and my co-host today is my husband, Ross. Welcome to Uncovered.
Thank you for having me.
Officially, he's edited very many episodes.
I've edited over 70 episodes.
He has
created both taglines, the little hooks, the music, intros.
Oh, okay.
The man behind the podcast.
He's the man behind the podcast. And right before we hit record, he was just paying me out for my intro. So anyway, it's going to be a fun episode. The reason I have invited Ross on to do this episode with me is because he is my partner in crime when it comes to business. And he is, I guess, your job when you're not editing podcasts, because unfortunately I pay you nothing, is a customer experience specialist. He also has done his MBA and worked in the corporate world for a very long time. So yeah, it's a little about him, and he is my sounding rock whenever it comes to studio stuff. So if you're a student and you're just like, oh shit, she's going to talk about business, I encourage you to stay listening, because I think when it comes to business, there needs to be an understanding between the business and the students. And I think the students really need to understand what goes on behind the scenes and why it's important to work with their studios, I think is the best way of saying it. So this all came about because I actually had a request from a listener. So thank you for sending them through. I love all of your requests. And let's just start with the first little bit. We're sort of going to work through their requests one by one. And the first one's a really good one. It is about acquiring and retaining students. Should studios be lenient on their rules of fear of losing a paying customer, i.e. showing up late, no shows, allowing underage in classes that are 18 plus, displaying judgment on others, studio attitude, etc.? Russ, what are your thoughts?
My first thoughts go to consistency across your business. And my answer to this is no, absolutely not. You shouldn't be lenient. You shouldn't tolerate it. I think if you're somebody who's witnessing that type of behavior and you'll see the staff only pull it up certain times, then all of a sudden you're sort of getting mixed messages as to what is allowed and what isn't allowed within the studio. So, yeah, look, you want to remain consistent as a business, I think, and you want to treat everybody the same. You don't want to create a situation where you've got people not feeling like they have or getting treated the same.
Yeah, look, and I agree. And when you ask me my thoughts, it 100% is the same. No, like, I very strongly believe, and I've said this before in a business episode, your policies are in place for a reason and they exist. So we need to be respectful on both ends. But what happens when the student walks into you and is like, but I paid for this class. Well, why aren't you going to let me in?
Well, again,
I'm 10 minutes late.
Yeah, well, again, you said it. You've got some policies and procedures, and like, what does the business want? And yeah.
Okay, my question then to you is, you guys are getting a real great insight to our marriage right now. My question to you then is, how would you approach a student who is disappointed when you say no because your policies or procedures, you making the decision to abide by them? Like, what are some things that you can do as a studio owner or an instructor or a worker who needs to say no, but still empathize with the student? You're really good at this. That's why I asked you this question.
So you firstly only accept students who arrive on time? No. Yeah, look.
Be like a part of the health screen form. What is your tendency to be late to class?
How tardy are you?
How would you rate your tardiness levels?
Yeah. No, so I think again it comes down to and I think you talked about this briefly when we were on the phone earlier. You've got to come back to what's your mission and what's the purpose of your business. And if you can be really clear on that, it makes it easier to communicate to the student or the person who you're talking to why it doesn't work, like why their behavior in that particular instance is not helping you achieve what's required. And I think it's pretty clear within the pole studio how disruptive that can be when somebody's rocking up late. And for all the listeners, I come from a CrossFit background, and again, the same rules are applied, that when you were in a class, you didn't arrive late because if you missed certain parts of it, it was unsafe because you missed the brief on the workout, you hadn't warmed up properly, and you just kind of have to suck eggs.
Yeah, suck eggs. Look, I agree. And I think the safety is really important. And we've obviously really honed into the arriving late part of this question. However, the fear of losing paying customers, this is really hard from a business owner's perspective. Like, you want everybody to love your business. You want everybody to get value out of it. At the end of the day, you're never going to be that to everybody. And I know mentally and mindset wise, I've had to go through a lot of work and really refine who my customer is, to be like, if somebody does rock up late and do make a big scene, post things on Facebook, talk really poorly about our business, they're not my customer, because they can't respect and have that respectful relationship with us to be like, we do this and we put these classes on, and we know sometimes things are outside of your control, but that is also outside of our control. So I don't understand why the business is the one that always has to suffer. And I think it's really important, and this is something I want to say to the students, is most of the businesses that you're supporting in the pole world are very small, what we would call in a business sense, mum and dad businesses. And I know that's a very traditional way, but they're very small businesses. They do enough to sort of provide for their lifestyle, and that's about it. There are, I'm saying majority, there are definitely some exceptions to that rule, but a fear of losing paying customers. I just feel if you're in a situation where you're fearing losing, one or two customers because of a decision, I think you might need to just reevaluate.
Yeah, it's probably very easy, and again, not being a business owner myself, only sort of living vicariously through your experiences. I can imagine it's very easy in a moment to sort of have somebody going, "Oh, but I'm only just a minute behind when the cutoff is. Like, can't I do this and can't I do that?
I'm only a minute late." Yeah. No, actually, you're 6 minutes late.
Yeah, or constantly, upsetting a class by being, too noisy or whatever it is. It's probably pretty easy in that moment to go, "Oh, it's just this one time," or, I might let this slide because it's going to upset the person that's directly in front of me, and I can see the emotion within them. What you're missing, what you can't see, is the 15 other girls in the class or the 10 other girls in the class who, if you let this happen, are going to go, "Oh, fuck, again." Like, here we go. Now we're going to have a crap class because all of a sudden they've come in late, and it's going to, it's be disruptive. So it's that flow-on effect that is actually really difficult to see.
Yes, and it is. And I think in my very small experience in owning a studio, while it was all in a very challenging time, it's taken a while to be in tuned enough to be able to pick those things up, that it's not just directly in front. And you feel that in the overall vibe of the place, I think. And it does require you as a business owner or a studio owner to be in the studio quite a lot, to be able to really feel those shifts. But I definitely think if you're in tune and you know what your mission should look like and you know how your studio should play out, I feel like you pick them up pretty quickly. I think just to really sum this up when it comes from a student experience perspective, and this is something I'm guilty of not being 100% at right now, is have really clear policies and procedures. Make sure, especially policies, share them externally on your website. So when people, we've just done that actually. So when people want to know what the late policy is, they're there, they're available. We also have a Facebook group that has for our private community, so only members are allowed in that group. And something we've done is develop the guide section in your Facebook groups, which are really good because it's like a internal intranet that you can have, so you can really explicitly state those things. And look, there are some responsibilities in the student to really understand their terms and conditions. I've just redone mine and I've laid these out very, very clearly. And they are some quite big terms and conditions. I don't think that many people have read them. And it is your responsibility as a student to understand what you're signing up for. And I say this as Steph, the business person right now. Steph, the studio owner, definitely struggles at being consistent in my approach. But I'm trying to be more consistent now, because if you're a studio owner or a studio manager with several people underneath you and they're doing a lot for you at that point in time, you really need to keep your approach consistent. And I've had to start doing that a lot lately, which, you know, when sometimes I may have been like, look, it doesn't matter this time, I've had to be like, no, I'm sorry, we need to maintain this procedure, this policy. So the people who work with me know how to approach a situation, because otherwise every situation they're going to come to me for. So yeah, that would be my recommendation to studio owners, is know exactly how you want your studio to run. Sense check it with other studios. I really encourage befriending other studio owners. Like, I've got a couple that I speak to fairly regularly, and I really appreciate them and our conversations. And I obviously have Ross, who does a very good job at sense checking me. He gets the emotional stuff, but he gets it when it's gone too far.
I think just bringing everything back to the basics for a second, when you're a customer, and this is a basic CX 101. For
those of you who don't know, CX means customer experience.
Yeah. You can sort of break down, or a simple model to think about is, you know, were you able to successfully achieve whatever it is what you were trying to achieve, and what was the effort that you had to go through to achieve, you know, whatever it is. Because again, people are trying to fulfill a need whenever they're shopping for something or getting a service. So, you know, as a pole studio, you go into that, you can be doing a number of things, but no doubt you've got a hierarchy of how you value them. So you may enjoy the physical element to it, but it's actually superseded by the friendships and the community. You might just enjoy being able to get away from the house. So there's a number of different things that you're trying to achieve by going to a pole class or being involved in a pole community. So were you able to achieve what you wanted to achieve out of that? And if somebody comes in and starts derailing things by having a poor attitude, by displaying judgment in poor areas, any of those sorts of bits and pieces, these are impeding your capability to be successful in that space. And then the effort part of it sort of plays the same element. You know, you might have to start trying harder in order to achieve what you need to if things are being disruptive in your area. The last part is how did it make you feel? What was the emotion associated with it? Our dog's currently picked up a squeaky toy and is now running around the house. So that the emotion that gets factored into that then comes into the loyalty to the continued business element of all of that. And if you start to create an environment of lenience that disrupts people's customer experience and those three main factors, then you're not going to long term have a positive relationship with your customers.
I think you said quite a few good things in there. Like, you talked about when people are shopping, they're looking for something. Every business should be here, or almost every business, it's a lie, but as businesses, we're here to solve problems. And as a studio, we have the solution to a problem. And that problem, like Ross said, is there's a little toy that Artemis is running around with. That problem could be several things. It could be their confidence, making friends, getting fit. but we provide the solution to that. And I like when you say how you made them feel. So first of all, understand what problem you're solving, because that's going to help you in your decision making. And if it's and many of your studios say this is a safe space, that safe space should be free of disruptions. It should be free of poor attitudes, because that doesn't create a safe space. But the other thing is, how did you make them feel? I'm pretty sure I've said this on the podcast before, I speak to my team very much about we're being experience makers. Like, we are here for our students our students to experience something. And even when you do have to turn them down, let's say for being late, it's showing that empathy and acknowledging, like, I know this really sucks. And look, they can throw that back in your face too. But I know this really sucks. However, we do this not just for the safety of you, but we also do this for the people around you. This is actually disruptive, and understanding how their behaviors impact others. Because in that initial moment, they're probably quite embarrassed. And yeah, they don't want to be, nobody likes being told no. So, yeah.
No, one thing Steph knows very well about me is I'm a big thinker around our expectations.
Yes.
And I guess
very much on when we first started getting together, he's like, have I told you my theory, my relationship theory? And I'm like, no, please tell me more. He's like, if you're just honest and you lay out your expectations, they don't expect things, and then that's okay. So he's like, I don't do Valentine's Day. I'm like, okay, I've never expected anything out of Valentine's Day.
We've never had a problem.
Look, mate, I wouldn't say no to flowers sometimes.
Sometimes. It's not like I worked in a flower business for a
Not
couple
at
of years.
all. And he only brought me flowers once. Anyway, side note.
So for I guess clarification, the definition of an expectation is something you believe will happen in the future. So a belief you have about the future.
Is that the legitimate definition?
Yeah.
Why do you know that off the top of your head like that? Did you Google it before this?
I've researched and read academic papers on expectations and expectancy theory and stuff.
Okay, continue.
So and we have expectations about everything, and I won't go into the super technical detail of all the different types of memory that we have and how we get to this, but you've got an expectation on almost everything. And therefore, you have an expectation around what you think is going to happen in the class, and you think you have an expectation of what you think is going to happen if you get sick or you get injured, and what that experience is going to be like when you go to your studio. And as soon as what you expect to happen doesn't happen, and there's a difference and a deviation to that, that's when there's an emotion. And the technical term is arousal, because there can be a positive emotion or a negative emotion. So if you went in expecting to get something and they gave you two of them, you're probably going to be pretty happy. But if you go in expecting something and they say, no, we're not going to do that because that's not part of our terms and conditions, then it's probably going to be a bit of a negative experience. And there's no doubt that it's on the studio's part of the studio's job is to help lay out those expectations as clear as possible. And like you said, generally the terms and conditions will help you do that. But again, we're sort of sticking with this concept of allowing leniency, whether it's students or instructors. The more that you allow certain behaviors to exist, the more that will embed within the culture of your studio, and all of a sudden people are expecting that to happen a lot more frequently.
Yeah, and I think that's a really nice segue and a really great explanation of expectations into the next question, which was like, does the same go for instructors? Should you keep certain people happy? Do you tolerate drama? Not getting involved? Certain rules don't apply to certain people, allowing teachers to attend beginner classes when students are on the wait list, etc. Exactly the same concepts. I think the answer to that is no. But that depends that's a no in my studio, but that depends on what your mission is. Unfortunately, I think the really realistic thing to say here, and this is very businessy, is everybody is replaceable. Even the best instructors can be replaced by other great instructors. And while it takes time, it takes money, it's a huge investment in bringing somebody new on. You shouldn't feel like you are held hostage and that you have to be lenient. You shouldn't jeopardize your mission or your vision or your values to keep somebody who isn't contributing to it. And it's really hard, like making decisions based around people in a industry that is predominantly community, and I say that with like air quotes. It's really challenging because literally that person on your team feels like family. And however, I did have family on my team. My sister worked for me for a period of time, and she was actually the easiest because I could be like, oi, you're not doing this right. And she was just like, yeah, okay. Like the relationship is different because I've built a tolerance with her. Tolerance, I don't know if that's the right word, but I've built trust that I can have honest conversations with her and she's not going to hate me for the rest of my life. Whereas that trust hasn't been built with these people. But yeah, it is really challenging. So I think, do you have anything to add on the instructors? No, it's very much the same. I think it comes down to what you value and just making that decision, and being consistent, being absolutely consistent with it. So do studios see their instructors as part of a team or just a paycheck? I'm really interested by this one, actually. But
I mean, we'll only know what other people think about from other studios, but my God, if they treat them as a paycheck again, you're not going to have a very good studio.
Yeah, I think it's a setup, right? Like, it depends. Yeah, like I know studios can sometimes incentivize people for having fuller classes. And that would obviously be the paycheck because they're bringing people in. But yeah, the way of which my business works is I have a couple of contractors and the rest of them are employees and they are my team. We do professional development once a term to help them upskill. I have a coach, Renee, who obviously was the previous co-host for Uncovered, who helps them upskill. I want them to be the best instructors they can be. So I try to facilitate that as best as I can. But
you don't have a business without customers, and you can't really do much with a pole studio business without your instructors. So you've got to look after your customers and you've got to look after your people.
And at the end of the day, your people, from my experience, is my biggest investment. That's where I'm spending the bulk of my money, is my people. So I need to invest in them right. But even we are very...
A quote that I said to you the other day, I can't remember where I heard it, was, what if you invest in your people and they leave? But what if you don't invest in them and they stay and they continue to be average employees? So you're damned if you do and damned if you don't if they're leaving. But the best thing you can do is provide the best environment for them to want to stay.
And when you go through your MBA, they talk very much about how your employee experience impacts your customer experience, and they are a flow-on. When you're in a business of service, you need instructors to be able to provide your product. They are a part of that offering. But yeah, if you don't have the right ones, they can impact you a lot. So you do need to work with them. However, seeing them as a paycheck, yes, that's correct. But not correct, but yes, they bring you in money.
And I mean, to what some of the things that you did when you had the studio, you could, as a instructor yourself, where a bunch of pain points lie around what it's like being an instructor, and you tried to remove some of those by having an iPod for every single room, making that easier, having better speaker setup in all the rooms. Those little things that don't feel like they make a big difference, but when there's, again, that people know what to do. They don't have to get their own stuff out. It's just there. It's loaded up with the videos of the routines that they can watch. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful. And I think it's really important to say that we are quite a big studio. We do have quite a big team. Not every studio has even the luxury of being able to have a head instructor who can coach people. So I think you need to look at the studio and look at the setup and understand it. Is it the owner who is running around like a chook with their head chopped off? I don't think that's a very good saying, but like running around like crazy to try to get everything done because they don't know how to delegate, because I'm sure there's many of them out there. So yeah, and I think you just need to look at that and look at what it's like. But I think I spoke to my mentor, and one of the first questions I asked her, she is in the pole dancing industry as well. One of the first questions I asked her is like, how do you see the pole dancing industry? She's like, I see it as a varying levels of hobby businesses. So you have some who are like literally do it on the side of their full-time job and make it work in between, all the way to those who have franchises, multiple studios across the country. So they're two different things. And the people who have got the hobby business are going to run their studio way different to the person who has a franchise where everything is absolutely mapped out and they're told how to run things and they're told how they should train their staff. That is more business, and that is what you would probably expect when you walk into these are actual businesses, but like that's what you might expect when walking into a Subway, let's say, because that is also a franchise. So there are varying levels in that. So, because the next thing went on to, do studios have staff meeting, teacher training, expectations for classes, or teachers given free rein? The answer is both, depending on the studio. It would be good to see more studios get that little bit more consistent and provide training. However, the realities is for some studios, they might have employees who only work 3 hours a week for them. What is the expectation on a studio for an employee who does one shift for 3 hours every week? How much are you expected to help train them in that?
Yeah. It's an interesting one, given that whilst it's only 3 hours a week, if you start adding that 3 hours up over the span of a year, I'm sure that adds up, hundreds of hours. And I'm sure
it's still an extension of your brand.
And they pick up things. I mean, one way that I'm thinking about this now through this conversation is, if you're a student in a studio and you're sort of feeling like it's not hitting the mark, and you sort of go, okay, well, let's have a think about that sort of earlier model and go, what is it that I'm trying to do? Why am I coming to the class? And actually thinking about what you're getting out of it, and then going, how hard am I trying to do this? And then you go another step, thinking about the instructors, and go, okay, well, what are the instructors like? Do I actually think the instructors are any good? Because essentially, if the staff are the ones that are facilitating your ability to be successful as a customer, it's the whole idea of service. So you need to, if you start thinking about it from, okay, these instructors are the ones that are facilitating my capability to be successful in this, and then go, well, does it look like they have team meetings here? Like, does it look like they're organized? How do they sort of get their own? And then I think you've got a little bit more of a lens to be, whether critical's the right word, but at least forming an opinion through a lens that's structured in some way to help form that opinion. I
think, though, to answer the question around should studios, because I know I've battled with this myself, is I have people who work with me for 3 hours a week. How much do I invest in them? How much, especially like financially, like how much training should I help with these guys? And coming back to what you just said there is, I rely on these guys to facilitate classes and provide a great class experience. So you should invest in them a lot. I think. And, you know, we've had this conversation recently. If they leave, well, then maybe you'll just be known for making the best instructors ever.
Yeah, that's the plan, right?
That's the plan. So, yeah, I think overall, it's really important whether you're a team member, a studio owner, or a student to be respectful and kind. I know the internet allows you to say things sometimes that maybe you wouldn't say face to face. So think about the way of which you are working with businesses, and take a little bit of ownership in terms of understanding your terms and conditions and the policies in the studio. I think that's, you can ask those questions as well. If you're a studio owner, take ownership in creating those policies and making them clear. Nobody likes to be called out. It takes time. And I say that like, because I'm still finalizing some of mine. I've spent a lot of time working through that and to try to make it as clear as possible for both my students and my team. So everybody's on the same page, because clarity is a hygiene factor in any situation. And so, yeah, take the time to do that. And if you're a team member, do your best to understand your studio, its mission, and what it's trying to achieve. And if there are policies readily available, do your best to understand them too, and to do your part, because it all leads back into the overall experience. If you're a student who doesn't understand the policies, then you can impact another student's experience. If you're a team member who doesn't understand it, you might make the student feel better, but you might impact the business, or you might impact your studio owner. And if you're a studio owner that doesn't understand it, then customer experience might be very questionable.
So to look at that example of a customer, a customer who doesn't really understand the ins and outs of their terms and conditions that they've signed up for, and then needs something from the studio that's outside the norm, whether they're sick, they have an injury, or whatever. Again, they've got a preformed idea, expectation around what's going to happen when they go into the studio. Now, unfortunately, that's not formed off an informed opinion. You know, they're not actually, they haven't read the terms and conditions. They haven't read the terms and conditions to inform
understand where they stand. Yes.
Yeah, and their thought process as to what's going to happen. And again, pole, from an outsider's perspective, pole dancing does such an amazing job at creating this community that's really supportive. And there can be a tendency to expect too much from that community, and in particular the business owner, when certain things arise. And that's in no way, shape or form fair on the business owner, because at the end of the day, it is a business and it still needs to make money, and it can't do that by giving a handout to everybody that needs one. And that's why policies exist. So by at least reading up on the terms and conditions and understand some of the ins and outs, you can better create what the expectations are so that you minimize the chance that you're going to have a negative reaction to something.
And because most of the time the studio is going to follow the policies of which have been created. So it'll be like speaking the same language. You're now speaking the same language and you can understand. And it's not to say that compassion and empathy shouldn't be applied. Like those things should definitely have its place as well. However, just understanding what the baseline is very important for everybody. Yeah. Absolutely everybody in a pole business. But you're right. It is, the studio owners do take a lot when something doesn't happen. I remember over COVID, we went online like everybody did. And I was going to create a new Facebook group for like our past and current pole sisters. And I just hadn't got round to it. But a part of that was we're going to keep our members only group as a members only group for those who joined the online, because of the way we had it set up. We had some Facebook lives and that stuff. So it was easier to keep it running the way we'd ran it. So I gave everybody plenty of notice, and I did, when I removed everybody from the group, I actually got a little bit of backlash to say that, this is a community and this is a time where everybody needs this community and you're taking it away from them. You don't care about mental health. And I was just like, oh, I do you remember, I cried so much. I'm like, what do you mean I don't care about mental health? I'm like, I do care about mental health, but like, how am I meant to run this business? Like,
it was very challenging.
It was a challenging, it was a challenging decision, but it was the one that I had to make because it made the most sense for my business at the time. Whether or not it was the right decision overall, I was still creating another group. It just wasn't my priority.
So some insight that I think is worth sharing, and I don't know if you've brought it up in the podcast before, but when COVID happened and we went into a lockdown, obviously none of the classes were available anymore.
Yes.
And inside the Pulse studio. So there was...
I'm like, where are you going with this?
So, well, again, just thinking about the customer experience and the customer mindset, the way that we approach that situation, knowing we kind of were fortuitous in some forward thinking, and somebody made a comment in passing at one event that we were at and said, well, what are you going to have to do if the studio closes down? I'm like, oh, crap, don't want to have to think about that, but now we are. So let's film a whole bunch of content and get that ready should that happen. And then obviously the events proceeded and we did have to shut down, but we saw a lot of businesses continue to say, no, we want you to spend however much money a week.
And this isn't just pole businesses. I think this is really important to share. This is
every business. This is every gym or fitness type of thing.
Yeah, we were watching the fitness space really
Even the
closely.
CrossFit gym that I went to is the same. It's like, no, we want you to keep paying the exact same thing, and we'll put some online Zoom classes on there. And you're like, no. Like, even if people are willing to do that, that's just not, you're not getting the same value. You're not getting what you're paying for. So it was for me a fairly easy decision to say, no, if you were paying for an online video membership of online classes,
your entire business model changes.
Yeah, and therefore your pricing structure changes. So we took that route, and I think the community, we tried to look after the community and that element, and obviously there were parts of it that Steph just mentioned, but at the end of it, I think by creating a different pricing structure and by creating a slightly different product, we maintained a lot of them. And a lot of them
maintain at more than 50% of our customer base.
So you need to, a big part of being or having, I guess, of a customer experience mindset is thinking about the decisions you're making from the customer's shoes. And I guess
saying that if it's a difficult decision, what is the communication around it? How are you going to approach it? How this is going to be a pain point for them, like understanding and using that empathetic element at the start of those discussions to be like, I know this is really going to suck, but this is a decision that we've had to make because of X, Y, Z is important to still acknowledge their feelings, whether it's good or if it's bad.
Yeah. And again, if you brought that sort of earlier framework back again and looked at
this Boyne's framework.
Yeah. But you look at it and go, okay, that situation where we're turning it to an online business only, you can't go to a class. Can you do what you were trying to achieve? Probably not anywhere near closely to being successful in that. How much effort is it? Well, you got to get out of, the comfort of your sofa and move into a room that's not designed to be doing what it's doing. So,
and you don't have a pole or yoga
hard.
Equipment or whatever else.
Getting to where you need to, the motivation to do that is pretty bloody hard at home. And then how does that make you feel? Probably pretty crap if you're paying full price.
Yeah.
So again, you're leaving your customer.
I feel like you whinged about your CrossFit gym the entire time. Yeah. But you didn't cancel his membership.
No, I didn't. I'm an idiot. What can I say? But yeah, so you when you start thinking about it through that, you go, okay, well, there's clearly some better decisions we can make from the customer's perspective that still work in the interest of the business. And
again, coming back to what is the problem and how do we solve it? Like our guys weren't going to be able to connect with people. So we had an online show night, a virtual show night in that time. We I would literally meditate every morning on Facebook Live. Yeah, like the things we did, it was like 100% entrepreneurship mode. Hey,
Yeah.
I'm just like rubbing my eyebrows thinking about it. But yeah, overall, I think key points. Pole Studios are businesses. Please respect them in that way.
Clearly, the key point is frameworks.
Hold on. And frameworks.
Yeah, exactly. Models. How do you think about life?
I don't know. He's definitely the for those of you who have done DISC, you're a C, aren't you? Oh no, you're a CS now?
I'm a CI. No, CES. SC. Support with a bit of
Is it a bit of conscience? Is it conscientious?
I can't remember what the C stands for.
Yeah, it's like
But I need detail.
he needs lots of detail, and I'm fluffy, so we're definitely opposites. However, coming back to it, mine is frameworks and respecting Pole Studios' businesses, just speaking the same language. And I think as studio owners, just know what it is that you want to achieve in your business and how you want to be known and the experience you want to make, because you are the leader of the experience makers in this capacity. So leading by example there is really important. Cool. Do you have anything to add?
No.
All right. That is our business episode. Thank you for joining me.
My pleasure.
Yes.
I'm sure I'll be back in another 78 episodes.
Yeah, we did talk about before I pressed record, he said something. My listeners aren't going to like you. So
Now they love me.
Yeah, so this week, upcoming on Uncovered, a poll. Likability of Russ. No, I wouldn't do that too bad.
So if you want me back, ask lots of questions. Say, Steph, we want Ross to answer all these questions.
We want to know if there's a framework that exists for getting a rainbow Manchenko.
Yeah, maybe I can figure that out.
Interesting. All right. Thank you for joining us today, team. If you love this episode, make sure you're following us at uncovered.pd. And until next time, we will see you soon.
Bye.